Okay, I'm going to tie a Dave's Hopper variant. The hook I've got in the vise is a size 10 U001 from Umpqua. This is a little bit easier than a traditional Dave's Hopper, and it's on the smaller side. But good way to start practicing with different kinds of wings and hair and stuff. I'm going to start my thread really towards the back of the thorax, or in this case where the back of the head's going to be, and I'm just going to wrap my thread back. I'm using 30 denier GSP. Trim that out. Put a couple more wraps in. I'm going to create a dubbing loop here. And I'll bring my thread back forward. You want to get that dubbing loop to at least the barb. Next, I'm just going to wax my thread, or the loop. And I've got a dubbing blend here. Oh, I want to put it in a dubbing twister as well, weighted. But I've got Antron yellow mixed with yellow ice dub, and I've got quite a bit, and it's tapered. That way it allows me to kind of shape the body. So this is an awful lot of dubbing. I know it's kind of hard to see on camera, but it's quite a bit, and I don't mind that on something like this, so I can actually kind of trim the body. And so we'll spin this up. That's probably a little bit more dubbing than I normally put in. Spin it up a couple more times. Okay. I'll put it inside my hackle pliers. Trim out the weighted spinner, and I'm going to start to work to the back just a little bit. That's kind of why I like the taper, as I can avoid the hook point. And then as I come forward, I can lay this or layer it kind of the way I want. And with this loose of dubbing, you can always twist it a little bit at the original point. And there's no reason to waste any of this either, because we can just cut this all out. Twist that up a little bit more. So I'm going to go back just a fuzz. But you can just cut the, we can tie the dubbing loop off, and you can just slide the dubbing off the thread and put it back into your pile. There we go. Okay. Immediately jump forward, bring my thread back into the loop. I'll put a few more over the top, and if it shifts around a little bit, that's okay. That's okay. So what I was saying is you take off what you have here, and you just slide it off. Oh, there it goes. And you just put it back in your pile for your next fly or whatever. Okay. Let's tie that down. And then what I'll do is I'll come in with my scissors and kind of trim it. Oh, blocking all that light. And we just want to kind of trim it at a bit of a taper so it has that kind of grasshopper look. To really get some new scissors. All of my scissors are about dull now. All like 20 pairs. It happens. Should really spend a day doing some serious research on sharpening them. Okay. And that'll work. Something like that. It's just easier to trim this out now than later. Okay. So what I have here, this is a turkey wing that I dipped in Softex and just let it dry. It doesn't take very long for it to dry, and it's enough to cover both sides to make the wing. And if you don't like the way it's totally shaped when it's dried, you can stick it out a little extra longer and kind of round this off at the end if you like. I'm not sure it makes a huge difference, but I'll show you how to do that. So you'll get to the point where you want to have the back of your turkey wing. And I'm just going to put a loose wrap over and pull up. And before I do anything, I want to check to make sure that it's where I want it seated on both sides. It's pretty close. And put another wrap. But if you want to trim this out, this should be about to the bend, or just past the bend, I should say. And you can just kind of round that off like so. So it's sitting something like that. That's pretty good. And we're going to tie this down. You want to tie that down fairly well. And having that little bit of dubbing up front shouldn't mess us up too much. As we're going to tie that all in right here. It's one of the nice things about working with this 30 denier GSP is it's very thin. It's very slick. The slickness can really mess with you if you're not used to using it, but it could also save your behind on a lot of flies. That's pretty good. It's kind of got a little tent wing look to it. Next, we just need some deer hair cleaned and stacked. I've already got my first bit here, and you want to take it back to the tip of the underwing or the turkey wing. We're going to place it right on top. I'm going to put 2 loose turns over, make sure everything stays on top. Now I'm going to pull up and put a couple of wraps in. And it's going to flare a little bit, but I'd rather have that and we can trim it out and flatten this down in a minute. Next, what I like to do is take this hair and start moving it around. You want to make sure your wing doesn't move, just the hair. And you can literally grab this and pull it underneath, or start to pull it underneath. Since we're not going to spin this part, we are going to spin the next part. And again, GSP is great for spinning hair. Okay. Now you'll have to kind of be a little careful on how much hair you pull, depending on how much room you still have up front and how confident you are in spinning deer hair. I'm fairly confident on doing stuff like this. I'm not one of these bass popper guys that puts like 7 colors in and creates diamonds and everything, but maybe one day. I've tried some of that stuff, pretty difficult. Now one thing I like to do so I don't mix up my wing with the new tips is I'll angle the tips forward. Again, 2 loose wraps, but this time I'm just going to let go and let it spin. And I'll kind of start to capture it and gather it. You want to make these tight turns. And if you start to encroach the eye, which is super easy to do here, you can just grab your bodkin and or half hitch tool and kind of force things to the back just to fuzz. Make sure you can have room to put your head in. Again, this variant is quite a bit easier than the original Dave's Hopper. A lot less going on. Get out of there, little one. Okay. Now, we can just whip finish this fly. I don't like to wet whip this. I know some of you guys that track with me, I wet whip a lot of stuff. I don't like to wet whip this just because it can really get stuck in all this hair, and it can kind of make things difficult. So when I pull this, I'll hold the eye, pull to the back real tight, trim it out, and I can start to pull all this stuff forward. Now on stuff like this, that's a moth fluttering that light climbed inside. Now what I like to do on stuff like this is I've got this curved pair of scissors, and I'll turn it backwards, and I'll start right behind the wing. So these heads typically have kind of this little funny pattern to it, but I can't put it in very well in a size 10, which is what I was asked to tie this on. But with my curved pair of scissors, I'm going to put that concave side facing back towards the wing at about a 45-degree angle, and I'll make my first cut there, kind of down close, just to separate the wing from the head. And we don't have to get totally close here, but just close enough to where it kind of creates this little gap there. Now the head is kind of bigger and runs at this kind of funky angle, and so what I'll do is I'll start high on my hair and just get the stuff I know I don't need out of the way, so I can start to look at it and say, hey, where do I need to make my next adjustment? Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of come back into that section I cut and line my tips up with that section as I come around just the top side. Again, this is a little bit hard to do on a smaller fly. This is kind of a small hopper. What this guy wanted. He originally asked me to tie it on like a 16, and I was like, I don't know about that. That's okay. I'm sure somebody can do it. I'm not sure that I want to try. There's kind of a lot that goes on there with it, but I'm not sure it'll function correctly either. Now, again, with my curve shank aiming down, I'm going to start on the underneath the eye and trim all that out so that you can see that the curvature is starting to move in that direction. And I'll work up onto my sides doing that too, just ever so slightly. So that this hair meets up with where your body is, because of where we place the wing and everything. It can leave you a little gap underneath, which you want to try to avoid if possible. And if you hit that, it's not it's not the end of the world. Okay. I'm going to move over just to some regular scissors. I'm going to pull this wing straight down come in again and start trimming this out as tight as I can. And if you have too much wing, I don't really here, but I'll show you. You can just clip off a little bit from the top side to adjust the amount of wing that you have. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to blow the camera. But to adjust the amount of wing that you have. And so as you come around, you just want to angle, follow the angle of the curved scissors. And then as we get underneath, I don't mind having a few sticking out to cover that little gap that we just talked about. So the idea here on trimming this is to kind of mimic the way a grasshopper looks, and so the grasshoppers have quite a bit bigger heads. So when you get to this point where it's got a little bit of elevation, you can come from the front side and just kind of trim off your front at the following the slope of the eye, and that'll get you fairly close to the shape. You don't want to overdo it and turn it into like a little ball, which is, you know, honestly what this is going to be, because it's on a 10. This is about as small as you can really get them, maybe a 12. Pretty tough to get smaller than this though. So, but being on larger hooks, it's a good way to practice working with deer here for heads and wings. And you just want to kind of just gently trim it until you're happy. Just take off small amounts at a time. Because if you cut too much, that's it. You gotta live with it. So you want to kind of take your time a little bit more. So you can kind of see that's got that almost caddis head to it. Now some guys will take their razor blade and shave this at an angle. I'd probably do that if I had just a little bit bigger hook. And I don't really glue the head on this one or anything. You can, you know, get a little bodkin or something and glue the tip in there. Nice, excuse me. The nice thing about this is it doesn't have all the extras like the body hackle and the trimmed legs and everything like a normal Dave's Hopper. And then what I'll do is I'll take my super glue and just gently brush a little bit on right in between where the wing meets up with the head, and then I can kind of pinch it and push down, collect it and all that kind of stuff, so that that wing will hold in the shape that I want it to, just a little bit easier. So anyway, that's it. It's just a Dave's Hopper variant. If you like the videos, always appreciate a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and share. And as always, everybody, happy tying, take care, and we'll see you next time.